And now I have the privilege and the pleasure to invite and introduce our speaker and teacher for this evening. Our congregation's tradition of welcoming congregants to speak on Shabbat Shuvah is one of my favorite things that we do as a congregation. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to hear from each other about the Jewish values that animate us, the Jewish choices that we make, and the role that Jewish life plays in our own biographies. This custom is made even more joyful and pleasurable for me when I get a chance to invite and introduce a friend to share this bima and share his wisdom with you this evening. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Stephen Frank, who is an endowed tenured professor of radiation oncology and holds the Bessie McGoldrick Professorship in Clinical Research at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. Dr. Frank's resume, lists of publications and honors is as long as your arm. He is regularly recognized by his colleagues, his professional associations, and the medical community locally and around the world. But he's here tonight because he's a mensch. And it is a delight for me to have a chance to ask him to share a few words with you this evening. Dr. Frank has raised a beautiful family and lived a remarkable life guided by the teachings and the values of Judaism and Jewish tradition. I've enjoyed learning a bit of his Jewish story in preparing for this evening, and I'm so thrilled to invite you to join me this evening as yet another group of students of Dr. Stephen Frank.
Rabbi Young, and I want to thank you for this honor from you and the clergy. When you called me and asked me to do this, I immediately called Ivy, and I said, Ivy, I'm being asked by Rabbi Young to speak, and she said, and we were getting ready to take Haley Jane to college. She goes, well, we're about to get ready and to go in the car. We've got a transition with Maddie going to be a senior, Lila's going to be a freshman, and Charlie's going to be in 6th grade. We've got stuff to do each night for these kids, Lila softball, and you're going to be traveling over the next few weeks. I said, you're absolutely right. So I called you right back, and I said, I'll do it. And with that, I feel honored to have the opportunity to talk tonight. And I'm going to talk tonight about Judaism, what I call the Nautical North, and the renewal, sanctity, and joy of my Jewish spirit. But first, I have to be honest and disclose that I needed to look up exactly what Shabbat Shuvah was. And so the return in these 10 days of repentance between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are days of mercy and forgiveness, days dedicated to repentance, examining one's conscience, and amending one's ways. And the Haftorah, the first portion of Haftorah says, return Israel to the Lord our God. And it's the same thing that's been said for thousands of years, that first sentence by the prophet Hosea. So return Israel to the Lord our God. And so I wasn't sure exactly where to go from there in terms of what how to communicate or how to tell my story. And then I immediately drove with Ivy. We took Haley Jane in the car. We dropped her off in Nashville, and this is her dorm. And at this moment, most parents say this is the most horrible time. You're dropping your child off at school, and this is our first. I thought it was a great time because finally she'll be able to spread her wings and really have the opportunity to fly. And then I got back on the plane as we got ready to leave, and she had left me with a letter. And this letter said, leaving me at college. So she allowed me to read a few of these words. It says, Dear Dad, well, today is the day. At this point, you are headed home, ready to return to our new reality. College is going to be an exciting time for me, but as a parent, I know it is a rather scary time leaving your child in another state. Maybe this feels a little like leaving me at summer camp, with a little more texting, but at some point it will hit you that I'm not going to be at the dinner table for rose, bud, and thorn. or in my room for you to kiss me in the morning. It is going to be strange and perhaps a little sad. And I imagine you or Mom will worry. But don't. You have raised a strong, confident young woman who knows who she is and what she believes. I will seek out friends who value me as a person and fill my bucket. I will be as safe and smart as possible, just like y'all taught me. I can only imagine how strange these next few months will be, but even though I'm leaving, I ain't going nowhere. Give me a call. I always want to hear from you. See you in 2 months. Love, your baby girl. So she had me at Dear Dad. And that was just, the tears started flowing. But as I think about it, as I came back and reflected on my journey in Judaism, I came to start to understand that, yes, I was Jewish, but how was I Jewish? And as I look at the Ancestry.com, I've gone back and looked at what my history of being Jewish really is. And we have family from Germany, from Russia, Poland, Ukraine. And so on that little ancestry, you do a little test, and it came back 100% Ashkenazi. And I really knew from here that I came from a lineage of strong Jewish women. My mother was from Georgia, my father from Alabama, and they met at the University of Alabama, where my dad played football for Bear Bryant, and we normally, after dinner, we commonly said, "Roll Tide." And my mom was an educator and followed my dad to Nashville, where she finished out her teaching degree at Peabody College. And here is where I began my spiritual journey, was at the temple in Atlanta. And as you can see, the 10 Commandments sit front and center right at the temple. And here my Jewish education taught about the covenant with Abraham and Isaac and the Jewish people. That covenant being a covenant of the gift, and here are the tablets coming from Moses on Mount Sinai, and those tablets with those 10 Commandments further extend into the Torah. And so from the covenant to the tablets to the Torah, here God provides a playbook of sorts. Here's how you live your life. Live out your life. And this has sort of formulated for me my Jewish compass. This compass has sort of reflected a consistency between right and wrong. And over the course of the year, I do deviate, as we all do, and this is a time tonight to talk about that return to the north. And if we look at the Jewish star, it somewhat represents a nautical compass, and that compass has a point toward right. In addition, God gave the Jewish people a land, and that land is of course, Israel. And this was coming out from Yad Vashem, which we'll talk about in a minute, but looking out toward the land of Israel. Following my early education at the temple, my parents sent me to the Epstein School, a Jewish day school that took me up all the way through middle school. And in that Jewish day school, we studied, we had Hebrew, we gave prayers, and here in the synagogue, the 10 Commandments stood front and center right in the middle of the shul. This gave me an opportunity to learn Hebrew and follow through with my own bar mitzvah. And as we look here, the 10 Commandments sit front and center on top of the ark, with the Torah deep inside the ark. And once I was bar mitzvahed, my uncle gave me a present and gave me a chai, and it was the first intentional act of a Jew that I took by putting this chai on. And I've worn this chai for my entire life since, my bar mitzvah. And so I was raised as, at that point, I felt Jewish. I felt proud to be a Jew and to express that proudness with Zachai. I then went into middle school and high school to Westminster, which is a Christian preparatory school, one of the top educational schools in the city of Georgia. And at that moment, it was the first time that I'd been exposed to Christianity, and not just Christianity, but evangelical, newborn Christianity. And I was required, as everybody, to take not only Old Testament, but New Testament as part of the curriculum. And during that evolution of studies, this particular verse stood out to me. It came from Matthew 27:25, and it says, "The Jewish crowd demanded Jesus be crucified and responded, 'The blood be on us and our children.'" And so at that moment, being a Jew had a different implication. Being a Jew turned out to be not such a positive thing. Not such a positive thing when small comments are made to the fact that you are a Jew. And when people say you're a Jew versus me saying I am a Jew, it had different implications. Started to go back and look at our own history, and the pogroms existed with my great-great-grandmother or my great-grandmother and her mother, and my great-grandfather suffered from a pogrom in the Ukraine back in 1920. When he was murdered, my great-grandmother and my grandmother then came to the United States on a boat through Ellis Island, and then came down into Georgia. I was also exposed to what happened at the temple, which is a bombing that occurred at the temple. So these direct acts stem from words that have existed in terms of what it means to be a Jew and what it's the burden of potentially we're exposed to being a Jew. I then went to University of Pennsylvania where I studied history, and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand, why did the Holocaust possibly happen? It forced me to confront, why do I believe in God? Does God exist? And how could God let the Holocaust happen? I took a course in the history of the Third Reich. I took philosophy with Descartes, which, is God really an evil genius, or is God really someone who is standing by his side and a truly omniscient, merciful God? And I was exposed to how propaganda turned into degradation of a people, turned into dehumanization, and ultimately the slaughter of millions of Jews. And how that process took place over a period of time in one of the most advanced societies in our time. And then the birth of Israel in terms of the country in 1948, the nation that must be able to defend itself and defend others, a nation that develops innovation, and a nation that makes the world a better place. This is the promise of Israel, and something that, as a Jew, I'm really very proud. And then, as I sit during the High Holy Day services, I look up and I see, "And you shall be a light unto the nations." So, how does that relate to me? How does that relate to us as the Jewish people? The light relates to Israel. What is the relationship with God, and what is the relationship with the light unto the nations? I then entered the Navy after college, and I was the only Jew on the submarine. And one of the officers came by and asks me, "Why are you eating pork? I thought Jews don't eat pork." And I reflected, why do I eat pork? Or what is the rules of kashrut? I really didn't know those. And talking to the rabbi said to me, what we do in terms of our eating, we recognize who we are at each meal, and this gives us some understanding and communication of some of the laws of kashrut, and perhaps this might be a reason why we don't eat pork while we don't eat shellfish and others. And that resonated with me to the point where I said, that created intention. From that moment on, I no longer decided to eat pork. And I said that was for me to become an intentional Jew in my spiritual journey. Our submarine then landed into Haifa, and we had an opportunity to spend time with the Israeli military, spend time with the Israeli submarines, the Air Force, the Army, and all of a sudden translated into additional pride into who I was as a Jew and what the importance of Israel was, a nation that could defend itself and a nation that would not permit what we had, the atrocities that occurred just a few years before. And not only were you pride about the military, but Israel has become a very unique place, a startup nation. How can a country so small actually develop more startup companies than any other nation in the world? That is a true light unto the nations, a light that has not only brought irrigation and brought opportunities for food and water, but it has brought that to other countries and continues to do so. Another example of what truly has made me feel very proud and intentional as a Jew. I then went to medical school and came here to Houston and had the opportunity to join MD Anderson, treating head and neck patients, treating prostate cancer patients, and moving technology and constantly improving and setting new standards of patient care, developing relationships, experiencing and helping people in greatest time of need. Ivy and I, when we came out here, then needed to look for our own spiritual home, and we chose Congregation Temple Emmanuel as our spiritual home, part out of convenience. I'm in the medical center. Ivy was in her vet practice right down the street, part because of the clergy and the warmness and most welcome, part because of our friends that were here, and part because of Becker and the opportunity to bring our children and think about how we were intentionally going to educate our children moving forward. And as you saw on that slide, front and center, the Ten Commandments. And following Becker, we then decided to continue that Jewish education for our children. And all of our children, then we decided to send to Schlenker over at Congregation Beth Israel. And there, the Ten Commandments sit right above the ark. Our kids, all 4 of them, went through the Jewish education, and that was done with a level of intent. So Lador of Ador. What is Lador of Ador? The responsibility of passing on spiritual knowledge and cultural traditions. This was with intent, sustaining the customs and the collective memory of the Jewish people, and continuity from generation to generation. And here in the congregation, 3 of our girls have now been bat mitzvahed. We stood under the ark with the Ten Commandments to the Torah and then to us. We were underneath the ark, the priestly benediction. Feel the Spirit of God right in front of us with the ark open. And then having the honor of passing that Torah from generation, from my parents to my in-laws, and then to us and to our children. And a tradition that we do in our family is we honor the Sabbath. We light the candles. We say the blessings over the wine and challah, and we call our parents who live in Atlanta, and we FaceTime them, and then we sing the blessings. A tradition that allows for us to maintain that tradition and that love of God and of family. There's a lot of other elements that we have contributed to and participate in with intent, because these are the organizations that are outside, both for Israel and for our kids, that continue the Jewish education well outside of our home. And that has allowed us to continue to grow and support Israel and the Jewish people for us and our families, and this Jewish moral compass. So if you extend that Jewish star and expand it, it sort of fits into that compass. As I look at the medicine, when we say to err is human, maybe, in my estimation, to sin is human. And over the course of the year, I sin just like everyone. But this is the time where sitting in these 10 days is an opportunity to return. So return, Israel, to the Lord your God. To me, that represents an opportunity to right the ship, so to speak, and point in the right direction and get closer with God. And I strive to continue to get closer and closer to God through doing justly, love mercifully, and walk humbly with God. So Haley Jane, she fortunately has a couple of different places on campus that she is spending time for the High Holy Days. Whether it's Hillel or Chabad, she's experienced both, and they're both places that she can continue to grow in her Jewish education and her spirituality. And then she sent me this most recent letter. This one just says Rosh Hashanah, and it says, Dear Abba, Chag Sameach. This is our first Jewish holiday we have spent apart, so I know it will be bittersweet. But I need you to promise y'all enjoy it. Rosh Hashanah is one of my favorite holidays. I've coming up with a menu and making Grandma Betty's honey chicken with Mom. Please make sure she isn't cooking alone. She gets overwhelmed and attempts to make many things at once. She must, 1, make an ingredient list with amounts, 2, check our house, and 3, go to the grocery store. If she doesn't, you will be at the grocery store 5,000 times for her. Good luck. But seriously, enjoy the holiday, enjoy the family time. Ahavaya Chaya Yona. Shana Tova.